Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for my final thoughts on Jack Green's Tsushima. Well, there's quite a bit to say about this game. Some of it positive, some of it a bit on the negative side. Um, Let me start with the positives. There is a really good and really detailed game system concealed in this very slim looking rulebook. And my use of the word concealed is deliberate because I think one of the biggest negatives about this game is not the design, it's unfortunately the rule book. I know that this was published as a magazine game originally, and magazine games are notorious for badly edited rule books. But having had to fight my way through this, I spent quite a bit of time on it in preparation for my previous video, and it struck me that the rules, as published, as printed, had never been introduced to a reviewer or any kind of proofreading. There were one or two rules that reference things that were not in the game. There's a reference to destroyer torpedo ratings that are supposedly integrated into the hull boxes. They're not. Um, some tables were mislabeled. So what I was using in my demonstration video, the gunnery combat table, is given a different name in the rule book. And there's lots of little things like that. There are many misspellings and there's a couple of weird sentence structures. It's just a bit of a pity, really, because had it simply been better explained, I would have I would have thought even more highly of this game than I already do, because as I say, there's a good system in there, and at its heart, it's actually a remarkably easy system. What makes it hard to learn is this, which is a great shame, because if someone had sat there and taught me how to play this game, I would have enjoyed it. And visually, it's not a bad game for its era. I mean, yes, I've spoken. Sorry, keep my words upside down. I've spoken about how the map is a bit bland and unexciting, but then it's representing an area of open ocean. So what can you do with it other than be blue? Despite their size, I like the counters. For their era, they're perfectly serviceable. And actually, the color choice is good. The shapes of the hulls that are printed on them and the information on the counters do stand out well. Aesthetically, that's quite a pleasing effort for 1989. I do give them marks for that. Um, as for the game itself, it's very detailed in a slightly unbalanced way. So certain aspects of ship handling, how you maneuver, and all the rest of it are relatively straightforward and basic. People familiar with this period and with hex-based naval war games would learn the movement and maneuvering rules in minutes. There are rules for formations, but they're written in what I would call a very loose manner. So the consequences of being out of formation is really down to your range from your division mates and your division flagship or your fleet flagship, and then apparently you suffer some penalties, but it's not that clearly explained. I think I'd have to experiment with the game a bit more to try and figure that side of it out. But the real meat of the game, the heart of this game, is very much the combat system, particularly as it relates to gunnery, because out of an average turn in this game, you'll probably devote the most time to firing your guns and assessing the damage. Now, I'm not a huge fan of computer-based war games. Not to say I hate them, but my first choice is, cardboard. But yet, with this game, I'd find myself saying that you almost want it to be computer aided, because that will make your turns move a lot faster. The first time I punched the counters out and tried the Battle of Ulsan, I decided it would be fun if I played both sides very differently. So the Japanese were trying to keep the range open and the Russians were trying to close. The Russians did manage to close. And one of their ships rolled quite well and scored 7 hits in one turn. And I thought, great, 7 hits on the main table. And then it dawned on me, oh my gosh, I'm now going to have to roll 7 sets of damage dice, cross reference the tables. I mean, it's not difficult. You Once you've figured out the steps, you know what you have to do. It just takes time, and that's for an action that involved, well, there's 7 ships altogether in the Ulsan scenario. 2 more join the Japanese side if you include their reinforcements. But if you scale that up, just try and imagine playing the Battle of Tsushima with all the ships present. You would spend, I guarantee you, the vast majority of that playing experience rolling for gunfire and rolling for the effects of your gunfire. And part of the problem is that the way the gunnery tables and the damage tables are constructed, they do quite accurately reflect the realities of warfare at that time, particularly at sea, where most of what you fired out of your guns would end up in the sea, unfortunately. And heavy damage that was done to ships would often be caused by a relatively small number of very well placed shells. So you're going to find that a lot of your shooting ends up not doing very much. And the question I think a lot of gamers would ask is it worth the investment? Now, I'm tempted to say that it is, but at the same time, I think that I would struggle to find enough time to play the full Tsushima scenario in a way that did it justice. And you all saw how long I took in the previous video demonstrating a turn between 2 ships. So again, scale that up and you can see the difficulty there. Now, to be fair to the designer, because Jack Green obviously put a lot of thought into this game, he does strongly recommend in the rules that this game is best experienced when played in teams, and that each team member should be an admiral of one stripe or another, either the fleet commander who also happens to command the most powerful division in their respective fleets, um, or a subordinate admiral with his own subsection of the fleet. And when you do it that way, then the division and the burden of doing loads of dice chucking is somewhat reduced. That said, if tactically you end up in a situation where all the component bits of your fleet are beating on a smaller chunk of the enemy fleet, it's still going to get fairly intensive on the game admin side of things. So not something this game can really get away from. And it is a shame because the re-implementation of this game, Togo, Dawn of the Dreadnoughts, for a game that came out in 2018, it has passed out of existence depressingly quickly. I've heard very good things about it. I've heard that it's kept everything that was really good about Tsushima, and it has massively streamlined and corrected all the things that were not so good about Tsushima. And it's a great pity that that game just seems to be completely unavailable. If I ever get sight of it or get a chance to try it one day, I will, because there is enough in this title to not just tickle my naval wargaming fancy, but to pique my interest in the Russo-Japanese War, which saw some really, really interesting situations from a naval perspective, certainly. So, am I glad I bought this game? Sorry, that was a very pregnant pause. I'm going to say yes. It is a good game. One has to remind oneself that it was made presumably in a rush, because again, magazine games and we all know the stereotypes behind the production process for those. It was produced in 1989 and it was done to a very tight time schedule, I'm assuming. So, seen in that light, it is a very good game. There is an awful lot of labour involved, but it does return what appear to be realistic battle results. So if you had an awful lot of time on your hands and some fellow players who wanted to give this a go, then yes, by all means, sail out and fight the Battle of Tsushima. But I would like to try smaller scenarios, maybe some what ifs. Again, what if the fleet's fragmented before they made contact for whatever reason, bad weather, breakdown in communications? You get a much better game if you play a smaller scenario. And one thing this game is arguably missing, and I won't push this too hard because again, to be fair, the game's called Tsushima, not the Russo-Japanese naval war, including the Russian ships that were at Port Arthur at the beginning of the war, I feel would have been a good shout. It would have been a great opportunity to allow players to play a lot of smaller actions, maybe as a linked campaign. And then if you were really feeling brave, do the biggie that is Tsushima. Maybe the newer game addresses that. Hopefully I'll get a chance to find out one day. So I won't suggest you all rush out and buy Tsushima, this Tsushima, even though it can be obtained relatively cheaply these days. Or at least if you find a copy. And that's not to denigrate the design. Again, I do like this design, but it's visually not the prettiest game, and in terms of its components, there's really not a lot to it, and I think that's what's behind the price point. That and the unfortunate fact that a lot of players didn't really like it at the time. I think it was a combination of naval games not really being to the taste of most strategy and tactics subscribers back in the day, but also significantly, it was that rule book. That rule book really mars it, and that's very, very unfortunate. What was I saying? Yes, I'm not going to say rush out and get it, but if you have an interest in naval history and war games dealing with that history, particularly at the dawn of the 20th century, or if you're a real Russo-Japanese war aficionado, then this is a game worth getting. It's almost an artifact in its own right because of how it's a product of an era when wargaming was noticeably different. When you look at the systems we like to employ today and the systems that were very much in vogue in the 1970s and 1980s, it's a very interesting window into the wargaming of the time. And actually, do you know what? Having said that, I'm now a bit determined to get Togo Dawn of the Dreadnoughts because I want to see what this has matured into. I'm actually very keen to see to meet its improved descendant, maybe someday. But I'll leave it there because on balance, Jack Green did himself proud. I feel it's a good system, it's a good game. It wasn't appreciated at the time for reasons which tragically could have been easily fixed. Just get a proofreader to read over the rule book. That's all it would have taken, but not to be. It's a respectable enough game. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed learning to play it, and I enjoyed the very short scenario that I've put together for you for the demo video. So if you get the chance, go try this game out, but don't make a cult of hunting it down. There are better naval games out there, it must be said, and there are even better Russo-Japanese war games out there. But great effort for what it is, and I'm glad I bought it, and I'm glad I reviewed it. I hope you guys are glad I reviewed it, and I do hope you get a chance to try it out, if only just to sort of satisfy your curiosity about it. So I suppose it only remains for me before I leave this game to say thank you guys very much for following this series. Thank you so much for the comments, which I've already seen appearing in the earlier two videos. I will get round to answering you guys as soon as I can. The feedback and the observations are always appreciated, as indeed is the pleasure of your company. Thank you ever so much for that. That too is greatly appreciated. It means a lot. To all my veterans, a big hello. Thank you again for putting up with yet another series when I blow the dust off a long forgotten title. To anyone who might be new to my channel, if this is my first video or the first series that you've seen, a very warm welcome to you. I hope that you like what you've seen, and if it's wargaming in general that's brought you here rather than a specific title, then please explore all the other stuff I've been putting on the channel. You're more than welcome. If it was Tsushima that brought you here, maybe like me, you were trying to puzzle the rules out and trying to figure out how this game works, then I hope that this has helped. And I hope you have fun with the game. I really do. But again, to all of you out there, whoever you are, wherever you're watching from, thank you so much. It's been really good seeing you, and I look forward to catching you in my next video. Take care. Bye.